Today we're finally going to get our hands on the long-awaited Chapter 4, and today's our final video breaking down everything we know, plus a few fresh leaks that just dropped. The first leak gives us an even better look at Yarnaby's movement mechanics. We got a glimpse of this in the trailer, but now it's crystal clear. Yarnaby is absolutely massive, and despite his crazy size, he can turn around pretty damn fast, making things way tougher for us. One of the leaks also shows Pianosaurus, and it looks exactly like what we saw in the trailer. We've known for a while that Yarnaby's kinda dumb, and honestly, I thought Pianosaurus would be just as clueless, maybe a little smarter. But judging by this movement, dude's actually got some solid intelligence, and even a bit of sarcasm. The problem? He's straight up bloodthirsty. While Yarnaby didn't immediately realize he was supposed to attack us, Pianosaurus made it painfully clear that we messed up by running into him, and then, boom, he charged at us like a maniac. And the last leak? It straight up confirms that we'll have to deal with power puzzles again. That way, diving into Chapter 4 will be even more fun, and getting into new chapter story will feel way. Out of all the new locations teased so far, the prison has caught the most attention from fans. This place seems to be where they held experiments on the monsters. That's right, the same Braun we saw in the recording, he went through this place too. The areas shown in that footage are most likely parts of the prison. The prison has a distinct symbol, 3 empty squares inside each other. Size-wise, it's no small facility. Just from a few trailers, we already know about at least 3 sections of it, though we won't know the full scope until January 31st. One trailer showed us the main entrance, which doesn't seem too special at first glance, but if you take a closer look at the floor, you'll notice some markings. After thinking about it for like 2 seconds, it's clear these are patterns from kids' games. The second known section is the main lobby. It's kinda similar to the lobby from Chapter 1. This area was clearly a hub for Playtime Co. staff. Looking up at the ceiling, you can even spot windows letting in that artificial light from Playcare. When you connect this with the entrance area, it's obvious that kids used to come here before they were turned into monsters. One of the leaks backs this up too. The third confirmed section is the holding or living cells for the kids. Based on the images, these cells were ridiculously small, with almost no light except for a couple of bulbs inside each room. From the trailer, we also learned that every cell had a system for releasing the infamous red gas we encountered in Chapter 3. Of course, this was used to knock out the kids before subjecting them to experiments, just like the orphans from the last chapter. And then there are the doors leading to the cells. I won't even start on how unsettling they are. But here's a thought. Why would Playtime Co. install such massive doors for kids? There's no way a child could handle even a regular metal door, let alone these. I've got a few theories, but I'm curious. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Now that we've covered the prison, it's time to move on to another new location. Or, well, not entirely new. I'm talking about the caves. This area acts as a link between the prison and other parts of the factory. Like the prison, the cave system is massive and can also be split into multiple sections. The first section of the caves was teased in the very first trailer where Baba Chops was introduced, the toy graveyard. If you take a good look, it's clear this area is filled with literal tons of dead and destroyed toys. At some point in Chapter 4, we'll definitely find ourselves here while making our way to the prison. The second section is the mines. These mines in Playtime Co.'s territory could serve all kinds of purposes, like running pipes or moving failed, dead, or overly aggressive experimental monsters. Alternatively, they might have been designed as emergency evacuation routes for Playtime Co. staff to escape the prison quickly and safely, if needed. There's no solid info yet, so we can only speculate. This kind of location is completely new for us. Finally, the third section is just the general underground areas. Honestly, I'm almost 100% sure these spots won't hold any big secrets or answers. These so-called dungeons will probably just be transitional zones. Like in Chapter 3, the most we'll likely get out of them are some puzzles to solve as we pass through. And the last new location we know for sure about is the regular work areas, spaces reserved exclusively for factory employees. These spots probably won't play a huge role in the Chapter 4 storyline, but they're still incredibly important for filling in the gaps. Why? Because it's in these rooms that we can find various tapes, the key to uncovering more about Playtime Co.'s operations and its dark history. These work zones act like little treasure troves of lore, giving us deeper insights into the company's secrets and past. We've already broken down some of the key elements of Poppy Playtime Chapter 4, but beyond the new characters and locations, we have to talk about the new mechanics that directly affect the gameplay. As of January 19th, 2025, there haven't been any official teasers or leaks revealing much about this, Still, we've got a few subtle details that might give us a glimpse of what's coming. Why do you think Mob Entertainment is being so secretive about the mechanics? Let me know your theories in the comments. Don't worry though, I know the approximate release date of the official game trailer and will definitely share it with you today. Now back to the mechanics. First up is the new hand. We all remember how Chapter 2 introduced the green hand, which brought the electricity mechanic, and Chapter 3 gave us the purple hand for jumping and the orange hand for shooting. Considering the fact that we lost the green hand in the final moments of Chapter 3, yep, it was sacrificed for our survival. It makes total sense that Chapter 4 will introduce a new hand for our grab pack. In one of the trailers featuring Dr. Harley Sawyer, there were a lot of odd shots, and some details slipped under the radar for many fans. But if you take a closer look, there's one specific frame where you can clearly see a suspicious red hand lying on a desk in one of the offices. Here's the thing. The only definite thing we know about it is that it's red. One frame doesn't give us much to work with, but fun fact, about a year ago, a YouTube fan channel created their own concept for a new hand, and it looks eerily similar to the one shown in the trailer. I really liked the concept of the dash hand, and it's entirely possible we might see a similar mechanic in Poppy Playtime Chapter 4. But when it comes to mechanics, it's not just the new hand that's got us curious. There's something else we need to talk about. We're all pretty familiar with the VHS tapes from the previous chapters of Poppy Playtime. They've served as a key source of information about Playtime Co.'s dark past, or just plain scared us, sometimes doing a pretty good job at it. But about 8 months ago, the first official Poppy Playtime book was released. What caught the attention of fans was the teaser image of the book. Alongside it on the table, we could spot a tape recorder and a small audio tape. Now circling back to that trailer with the new hand, we see a similar table with what appears to be the same tape recorder. And this hints at something big. This could be Dr. Harley Sawyer's office. Interestingly, this office seems to echo the vibe of the iconic Elliot Ludwig's office. Considering how crucial Dr. Harley Sawyer is to the storyline of Chapter 4, the secrets hidden in his office could hold immense value for the narrative. And one of our key tools for uncovering those secrets will likely be the audio tape recorder, which we've now spotted multiple times. The trailer kicked off with Poppy saying that everything we've seen so far was just child's play, and that the prison is something entirely different, something truly horrifying. We now have solid confirmation that the new hand is the red hand. But one of the biggest reveals in the trailer is that Dr. Harley Sawyer is definitely an anti-hero. Turns out, he's working alongside the prototype. On top of that, I'm beyond thrilled to see that Kissy Missy survived after the incident. The trailer also officially introduced us to a new character, and surprisingly, it looks like they'll actually be on our side. Just as we suspected, it's none other than Doey the Doman. First up, we've got the Nightmare Critters, who were revealed over 3 months ago. These guys are probably the most controversial addition to this chapter. Technically, they're like the edgy counterparts to the Smiling Critters, but in a way, they still feel like a rehash of the originals. The Nightmare Critters lineup includes Baba Chops, Icky Licky, Raby Baby, Alistair Gator, Simon Smoke, Poe, Tui, and Maggie Mako. Based on their descriptions and their less than stellar personality traits, it's pretty clear they're aimed at a teenage audience. When these characters were first revealed, fans had mixed reactions. Some people absolutely loved the idea of Nightmare Critters. Comments like, "I actually think they're a really creative idea. A lot of popular toy lines have teen offshoots that are usually gross and edgy." Or, "I'm fine with it actually. I like how we have the Smiling Critters for little kids and Nightmare Critters for older kids. We saw cartoons back in the day have the opposite personalities, so it makes sense. It's interesting we haven't heard about them till now, but it looks like we're heading into the lab areas." So, I'm curious where this chapter is going. Popped up everywhere. But not everyone was on board. A big chunk of the fandom felt like the Nightmare Critters were a bad move, especially considering how the smiling critters didn't exactly work out the first time. To them, it just feels like the same idea, repackaged as edgy. We've also got official confirmation that none of the nightmare critters will play a major role in the story. Instead, they'll just show up as enemies, similar to the critters we had to fend off in Chapter 3. Their gameplay purpose and mechanics will be pretty much identical to what we've already seen. An interesting detail though, none of the nightmare critters will have upgraded versions like Dog Day or Catnap from Chapter 3. So, while they're a fresh addition, they won't bring any major twists to the table. Now that we've covered the new critters, let's talk about what might just be the main antagonist of Poppy Playtime Chapter 4, Yarnaby. This monster is a wild mix of a lion and some kind of plush toy. Technically, he's a lion, but the crazy part is his fur, or rather, the colorful bundles of yarn covering his body. It's definitely a unique design. Yarnaby's standout feature? His ability to open his mouth a full 180 degrees, revealing multiple rows of terrifying razor-sharp teeth. Yarnaby himself is actually Experiment 1166, a former orphan we first learned about back in Chapter 3. Before being turned into one of Playtime Co.'s monsters, this poor kid was one of the brightest children around. His skills genuinely impressed a lot of the employees at Playtime Co. But after a series of experiments that ultimately created Yarnaby, he turned out to be a major failure. Why? Because Yarnaby is, well, kind of an idiot. Interestingly, he was developed under the full supervision of Dr. Harley Sawyer, someone we're already familiar with. According to Sawyer's own reports, Yarnaby was such a disappointment that the doctor eventually decided to isolate him. This left Yarnaby in a pretty lonely situation. His only connection was with Dr. Sawyer, who essentially became Yarnaby's entire world. Sawyer was the only person Yarnaby could trust or even understand, but honestly, this is just a surface-level take on their relationship and Yarnaby's interactions with the other Playtime Co. staff. I'm keeping it brief so the video doesn't drag on, but trust me, there's a lot of hidden details here. I'll dive deeper into all of it in future videos. For now, we don't have a solid idea of Yarnaby's actual role in Chapter 4. Remember earlier when I said he might be the main antagonist? Well, there's also a theory that Yarnaby was never intended to be the big bad of this chapter. Outside of a couple of posts mentioning him, there's been no concrete hint that he's going to be the key monster in Chapter 4. This actually starts making way more sense when we think about another new monster that's got all the Poppy Playtime fans hyped right now, Dr. Harley Sawyer. He's the guy behind all the experiments at Playtime Co., which is pretty insane when you think about it. One of the trailers really gave us some major insight into questions we've all been dying to get answers to. But before we dive into that, let me show you the very first time this character got mentioned in the Poppy Playtime universe.
My name is Harley Sawyer. I'm called the Doctor. When I look at this company we've built, I do not feel proud. Declining profits, failed experiments, people are constantly seeing things they shouldn't. How is that anything less than complete failure on our part? It's pathetic. Now we're understaffed, safety protocols are being abandoned, workplace incidents are common. We can't avoid a lawsuit forever. We need to deal with all of these issues at once. I'm here now with a solution. The Bigger Bodies Initiative. Giant toys. We can increase our workforce and simultaneously decrease the number of lawsuits and people on our payroll if the people we have working aren't people. Put me in charge of it, and I will save this company.
Right now, Dr. Harley Sawyer pretty much is Playtime Co. His mind's been uploaded into the Playtime security system, and his body, fully mechanical. This basically makes him immortal, and the only way to take him out seems to be straight up destroying Playtime Co. completely. With that in mind, it's clear that Dr. Harley Sawyer has total control over everything happening on Playtime Co. property. He's got access to anything with a computer code, which means I'm 100% sure he knows about every single move we make while we're there. Like I said before, we're literally walking around inside his body. On top of that, Dr. Harley Sawyer's got a massive server network directly tied not just to him, but to the player too. The moment we stepped into the building, it kicked off a chain of events that's led us to where we are now. And right at the center of all this madness, Dr. Harley Sawyer. He's looking more and more like the ultimate villain in Poppy Playtime. All the other monsters we've seen in past chapters, they're just his puppets. Honestly, the chances of him being the main antagonist in Chapter 4 are through the roof. And now we've got one last monster to talk about, one we found out about way earlier than Mob Entertainment probably planned, Pianosaurus. Some fans managed to decode an ARG image and came up with a rough sketch of what Pianosaurus looks like, basically leaking info that wasn't supposed to drop yet. After that, Mob pretty much had no choice but to confirm the fan theories. There's not a ton we know about this guy so far, other than the fact that he's a dinosaur with a bunch of piano keys on him and can play different melodies. Honestly, I'm not really sold on the idea that Pianosaurus is going to play a major role in Chapter 4. Most likely, he'll end up being a side character, kind of like Miss Delight was in Chapter 3. So, what's your take? Who do you think is going to be the main antagonist in the new chapter? Are we finally going to see what the prototype looks like in Chapter 4? Today, we're not going to waste time fantasizing about how he might show up or what his design could be. Instead, we're breaking down the cold, hard facts on why he's definitely going to appear, and how Dr. Harley Sawyer plays a crucial role in this. The buzz around the new trailer still hasn't died down. Between all the hidden details and the obvious updates, which we'll also cover today, there's one thing that's been stuck in my head for 2 days straight. We all know Dr. Harley Sawyer is set to be the main antagonist of this new chapter, and while I initially thought he might not be as dangerous as the prototype, all my doubts were completely wiped away after watching the gameplay trailer.
They call him the Doctor. He works with the prototype, commands everything down here. Hunting us, starving us.
Not only is Dr. Harley Sawyer a full-blown monster who seems to enjoy tormenting and torturing others, but now we've learned he's working alongside another twisted figure. Of course, I'm talking about the prototype, aka Experiment 1006. This new revelation completely changes how we see the Playtime Co. factory and everything going on inside it. Before, most fans were convinced that Harley Sawyer was running the show solo while the prototype was doing its own thing. But now, things just got a whole lot more complicated. I always knew Dr. Sawyer wasn't exactly an angel and that he was fully aware of all the horrors happening inside Playtime Co. However, I assumed he wasn't directly involved in them. But with the official confirmation that these two are working together, it really makes you wonder if everything we've seen up to this point was just child's play. It's important to remember, though, that we've only scratched the surface of the Playtime Co. mystery. What's about to unravel in Chapter 4 and beyond might be far scarier than anything we've seen so far. Poppy herself pretty much spelled this out for us, not just in Chapter 3.
All right, once we hit the ground, we need to be cautious. There's something...
but also in the gameplay trailer for Chapter 4.
Down here, it's not like anything you've seen above. It's hell.
Prison is going to be the main location of the new chapter. Considering that most of the experiments were conducted there, it's clear this place is also central to Harley Sawyer's work. He's the one responsible for creating all the monsters, including the prototype. This solidifies even further that Dr. Sawyer is the main antagonist of Poppy Playtime Chapter 4. But we've already touched on the fact that these two, Sawyer and the prototype, are working together. And from the looks of it, the prototype isn't just an experiment. He's Sawyer's right-hand man, or maybe even his partner in crime. Let's dive into a little history lesson and revisit the very first mention of Dr. Harley Sawyer in the Playtime lore.
My name is Harley Sawyer. I'm called the Doctor. When I look at this company we've built, I do not feel proud. Declining profits, failed experiments, people are constantly seeing things they shouldn't. How is that anything less than complete failure on our part? It's pathetic. Now we're understaffed, safety protocols are being abandoned, workplace incidents are common. We can't avoid a lawsuit forever. We need to deal with all of these issues at once. I'm here now with a solution. The Bigger Bodies Initiative.
We also know that Dr. Harley Sawyer has access to an enormous server database storing tens of terabytes of information. Since Harley transferred his consciousness into Playtime Co.'s system, not only does he have complete knowledge of the company's past and access to every experiment, but he also controls the factory's entire security network. This means he can see every corner of every location within Playtime Co. In essence, he is Playtime Co., and that makes things a whole lot more complicated. There's no way to act without it being noticed by him. Think about it. Every time the prototype showed up, it was perfectly timed. And yet, we've only ever seen his hand. But here's the terrifying part. Since Dr. Sawyer has access to everything with a digital code, he can control the entire factory remotely without being physically present. If he doesn't want us getting within a kilometer of him, we won't. The trailer really drove this point home. But it also hinted at something interesting. We've caught Dr. Sawyer's attention. He explicitly said he wants us to play his game, and if we win, we'll receive a reward, a meeting with Dr. Harley Sawyer. Now that second part is just my theory, but the mention of the game is definitely in the trailer. From this, we can infer that we'll never see the prototype unless Harley Sawyer wants us to. But here's the kicker, we will see him in Chapter 4. Speaking of the prototype, his partnership with Dr. Sawyer raises a ton of questions, especially since there was no initial understanding or trust between them. One of the VHS tapes even directly confirms this.
Log code 24459. In relation, experiment 1006. The prototype. Stubborn as he is, and always silent with each passing session, I'm still uncovering fresh data nonetheless. Today's discovery.
Ready to talk now, are you? I possess
a question.
Go ahead.
Do you feel anything?
This question referred to once exactly.
You stick us, beat us, tear up flesh.
Do you feel it? There's a secret inside you, 1006. Valuable beyond all measure. Regardless, I learn something new about you every day. It excites me. Thank you. You thank me.
But what exactly led to their partnership? It's likely that after Hour of Joy, when all the factory employees were killed, and the prototype was the one who initiated this, Harley Sawyer realized that Experiment 1006, the prototype, posed a real threat to him. Considering everything we've heard so far, the Doctor may have been the prototype's main target from the start. That's when Sawyer probably offered the prototype a deal. We know that not all the monsters are against us, and not all of them are evil, and that, right there, is something the prototype definitely doesn't like. But since the territory of Playtime Co. is massive, searching for all the other experiments would take an enormous amount of time. So, what we get is a mutually beneficial deal. Harley Sawyer provides information, and the prototype ensures his safety. It sounds a bit complicated, but I hope you get what I mean. After that, the Doctor got sucked into the game, becoming just as bloodthirsty as the prototype himself. And given all of this, and the fact that Chapter 3 was the catalyst for the prototype story, the chances of seeing Experiment 1006 rise significantly. Of course we won't be fighting him, and we definitely won't be defeating him in Chapter 4. We'll just see him. But if this happens toward the end of the chapter, then Chapter 4 will officially be the most epic chapter of the Poppy Playtime saga. But seeing the prototype is one thing. The real mystery lies in discovering his true motives. Everything I've said so far has been theories and speculation. This will all unfold in Chapter 4, with the one who reveals it to us being none other than Dr. Harley Sawyer. I'm guessing this will come closer to the end of the chapter, and just like with the prototype, the chances that we'll be fighting, and especially defeating Harley in Chapter 4, are speeding towards zero like light speed. Big hugs to everyone, and see you soon the day after tomorrow.